Trexo, a camera motion control company with 2 successful Kickstarter campaigns under their belt, has an impressive new product called the Converta Video Slider that promises motion control for the masses, and it's useful for filming products, time lapses, and much more. Time for a full review.
You're watching CineD, supported by B&H and CVP.
Hi, I'm Grant Mailer-Sheldon. Welcome to CineD. First, since this is my first time working with a Trexo product, let's start by breaking down the various configurations that you can build with the Converta Video Slider. The Converta packs a lot of features into 2 core packages with an optional upgrade and a variety of additional accessories for various tasks. Converta 600, 23.6 inches of operation length, $495 for the light package. The Converta 400 has an operation length of 15.7 inches, and it's $395 for the light package. Now, if you add the standard optional upgrade, it adds an additional $100 to the overall cost and adds a turntable plate to either the 600 or 400 and the necessary mounting point for that turntable. Beyond that, you have the choice of several a la carte accessories that are all compatible with the Converta and the Trexo Converta phone app. Those optional additional accessories include the 3-axis kit, $795, a carry case, $100, L brackets, $70, pan tilt V2 module, just one, $395, and a phone holder, $25. Initially, I was confused if I needed the L brackets and the 3-axis kit, so I want to define the above list a bit. If you purchase the 3-axis kit, that will include 2 V2 pan tilt modules and both the needed L brackets for motion pan and tilt moves. Do you need the 3-axis kit? It depends. If you're only interested in using the slider as a B-angle like this one, it's a common use case, then you're only going to need one pan tilt V2 module that's panning with your subject and connected to the Converta and app. However, if you want to create diagonal 3-axis moves or a time lapse, perhaps off a statue to the sky, you're going to need the 3-axis kit. There is one accessory that Trexo does not provide, a time-lapse trigger cable. For that, you'll need a 2.5mm time-lapse cable, and I purchased one made by Velo from B&H for my Sony a7R5, and it wasn't that expensive. Now, for a few first impressions right out of the box. The soft case for the Converta contains different spots for each of the various components and a few pieces of pre-cut foam. Unfortunately, this is not something I would check on an airplane, and I would be very careful transporting this kit. Exploring some kind of hard case option is definitely needed here unless you plan to keep this slider in a studio, in air conditioning, without transporting it around ever. Packaging aside, one of the more impressive things that struck me when first diving into the Converta is what a Swiss Army knife this slider really is. And the fact it isn't many thousands of dollars to purchase is pretty incredible. It's one of these products that's tricky to talk about because I only have the space to cover a few use cases, and there are so many other options beyond what I discuss here, including, stop motion. My introduction to motion control started years ago working on motion time lapses and other normal slider moves for a Discovery show in Utah. And those initial experiences weren't fun. Tons of cables hanging everywhere, low weight capacities, motor belts that always seem to be slipping, a tiny speck of dust seemed to make the motion of the move bumpy, and the whole rig required expensive batteries that only worked on that one rig and didn't work on any of the other camera systems that I had with me. It was, in short, a bummer. The team at Trexo have clearly worked hard to alleviate many of the pain points of other motion control products. For one, the general weight capacity is great, and because of this, you can use a wide range of camera systems with the Converta. Here are the weight limits broken down by how you have the slider and turntable oriented. 22 pounds in horizontal mode, 6.6 pounds while in inclined mode, defined as a 22.5 degree incline by Trexo, 17.6 pounds while in vertical mode, 11-pound capacity for the optional turntable. A few more weight limits to keep in mind when using the 3-axis rig and V2 module in conjunction with the Converta. 11-pound weight capacity in 3-axis mode, again that's 2 V2 modules with brackets, 6.6-pound weight capacity if only using 1 pan tilt V2 module. Moving away from weight capacity. The design of the slider itself is matte black with the occasional red accent point. One of the main spots painted red is a series of 1/4-20 mounting points that seem perfectly placed for a small monitor or maybe a wireless transmitter, and it's a great spot to just view the camera angle during operation with a monitor. Now there are 2 mechanical silver knobs at the base of the slider that when unlocked allows you to create a mechanical pan without a V2 module. Personally, I preferred using a module for the more specific keyframes, but it's certainly a unique feature of this slider. My main takeaway from opening the Converta box for the first time is that it seems like this whole kit should be more expensive. But who am I to complain? You have to keep in mind, I just came off 2 shows back to back where I used a motion slider for roving wide shots, and that whole system was much more expensive, talking thousands of dollars. But I didn't have access to the Converta at that time. Okay, let's chat about the overall operation. The biggest point of failure I see in the operation of motion sliders is right at the end of the track when the move stops and shifts directions. Somehow, the $495 Converta shines here, and the camera slides to the end of the track and shifts direction smoothly in a way that is very hard for a human operator or another motion slider to replicate. This right here is a reason to add the Converta to your kit. This makes it incredibly useful as a roving B-angle in an interview because you can use 100% of that motion in the edit and not have parts of your shot that are too jumpy. The Converta slider has a single 3/8 screw thread at the base and 4 small feet. All that is to say that when you're using the 3/8 thread, you'll want a fairly beefy tripod, especially when factoring in the camera weight. I find both the app and the control panel to be intuitive and user-friendly. Gone are 3D representations of hundreds of keyframes and nebulous names for different features. Everything is easy to navigate, and that makes triggering time lapses or setting moves or overall speed very simple. One thing to note is you'll need to set your keyframes before you can move over to select the interval in the time-lapse menu in the app. Of course, you're going to still need to think about all the things you normally would when shooting a time-lapse, such as star tracking or an ND filter to allow you to drag your shutter more and more during the day, etc. The slider is really just doing the work of moving the camera and triggering your shutter on whatever interval you decide or with whatever camera settings. Everything in the app is built around a timeline tab that serves as a representation of the move you're trying to create. Simply hit the plus button in the top to add a keyframe or use the joystick to move to a different keyframe while clicking the speed button to make it a slow or fast move. If you use the 3-axis accessory, you will suddenly be able to use the joystick to set keyframes in any direction you can think of. Cool. Worried you might bump your tilt when panning to your preferred framing? You can lock your tilt or vice versa to allow you to focus on moving just one axis at a time. All of this made a ton of sense to me, not someone who has built a career on motion control, and I appreciate how I'm not being overwhelmed by various menu options. Trexo has made the decision to go with USB-C chargeable internal batteries for both the Converta and the pan tilt modules. Battery life per charge will vary heavily with how much you're using the slider and the modules, but I found I was getting about 5 hours with the pan tilt V2 modules running fairly often with a 3.2-pound Sony a7RV camera and a smaller Sigma lens. The slider itself lasts several hours for me before I notice the battery indicator getting low, but I'll admit it's slightly tricky to judge overall battery time for this because I'm constantly using it in all sorts of different modes with different rigs and lens changes. Using my Apple MacBook Pro charger to charge the modules in the slider is incredibly useful because I'm often on smaller crew travel jobs internationally, and taking less chargers and battery types with me means less carrying from airport to airport. Built-in batteries are a small but meaningful feature to me, and of course, you could always take a camera battery with USB out and charge the slider up that way too in the field. However, lithium-ion battery tech only has a set number of charge cycles, often measured in the hundreds or thousands, and you will someday have to swap out that internal battery. And that means a shipment back to Trexo. If you're in Europe, you can ship it to the Trexo team there. There's also a service center in the United States. That's all something to keep in mind. For my first time working with a Trexo product, I was surprised by just how much I enjoyed using the Converta Video Slider. It's easy to control, has a weight limit that fits most of my cameras, and it's small enough and simple enough to bring along and add production value without the headache of multiple retakes. You know, I don't think this would make a great rental unit because of the soft case, internal components, and relatively affordable price tag, but for owner-operators, the Converta makes a lot of sense. It also takes only a minute or two to set up this slider as a B-angle on an interview, and then you can literally back away and concentrate on operating a camera. The fast setup time may be one of the biggest draws with the Converta. Whether or not you need the additional cost of the 3-axis kit or the turntable, well, that's going to be up to you, but there is a case for buying the slider in your preferred length and building the kit slowly over time as you become more comfortable with its usage. In short, the Converta punches way above its weight, and it's worth a look. As always, a very special thanks to Rev Studio in San Diego, California for their help with this review. Go to revstudios.com for more info on how to book their beautiful studio space.